And right now,
NATO's 32 world leaders are gathering in the Netherlands for the start of a historic two-day summit that could unite the world's biggest security organizations. President Trump arriving just about an hour ago.
And before leaving D.C. this morning, President Trump said he was uncertain over whether the U.S. would abide by the mutual defense guarantees outlined in the treaty. Trump telling reporters on Air Force One he's committed to being friends with the NATO allies. The summit comes amid a backdrop of unrest in the Middle East, where Trump moved to strike 3 nuclear enrichment facilities in Iran. So we want to bring in U.S. Representative Dan Meuser right now. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Very nice to be with you.
Well, glad to have you here. We want to start with the U.S. strikes on Iran. We understand Congress was set, to be briefed this afternoon on those weekend strikes, but that meeting, as you know, was postponed. Can you share why and what was supposed to be discussed?
Well, we were going to have a classified, I tend to call it a semi-classified when you have a large group like that, update and informational meeting to have a clear understanding of the threats that existed, what was behind the final decisions to send our strike force over and destroy the nuclear facilities in Iran, and talk about what the next steps are. Clearly, well, in my view anyway, I won't say clearly, the meeting was postponed because there must be some updated information, and they want to make sure they're providing us the right and accurate information. And the meeting's been reset for Friday.
So, Congressman Meuser, tensions in the Middle East have escalated again. From your perspective, what's the U.S.'s most urgent priority in managing the conflict involving Iran and Israel?
As far as the president is concerned, and I think all of us, is a ceasefire. Better yet, to end the conflict and actually have peace. Now, the president is trying to gain peace through strength. That's just not a saying; it's a strategy, and we're getting there. As you well know, the president was quite frustrated this morning, as you brought out, because the ceasefire was disrupted pretty quickly by both sides. So the president, on his way to NATO, got on the phone, spoke with Israel leader Benjamin Netanyahu, and discussed, strongly encouraged, shall I say, as opposed to just directed them to stand down, give this peace a chance. And that's what happened. Israel did stand down because they were about to retaliate, and so far we've got a ceasefire that's existing.
Yeah, we heard the president's frustration earlier today, as you mentioned, over that. And now there is growing concern over potential U.S. military involvement here. Do you support a stronger American military presence in that region?
Well, I don't know about that, but I do think that we need to maintain a presence at the request of not just Israel, but most of the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Qatar, who's playing a role in trying to negotiate. You see, Iran is a pariah. Iran is not just a adversary, almost enemy of the United States and Israel. The Middle East countries do not appreciate, nor do they support Iran's terrorist activities. I mean, who in the free world or the civilized world would condone the type of terrorist activities that Iran is engaged in? They fund Hamas, they fund the Houthis, they fund Hezbollah, and they engage in their own terrorism as well. They wanted to build a nuclear weapon, likely for its use. And this is nothing new. This has been going on now for 3.5 years, 4 years, maybe even longer. And the idea that they would have the enriched uranium at the level they had was a very dangerous situation. So the president made the decision, sent our fighters in, as you well know, and we destroyed their ability to build and create a nuclear weapon.
So speaking of which, the Wars Power Act is actually a big talked about topic right now. Do you think it's being respected in your view, or do you think there's been an overreach by the executive branch?
Well, the fact is that Barack Obama, when president, had similar strikes, very similar, on 9 different nations, both through our Air Force and Navy and through drones, which of course are under military command. The president is the commander-in-chief. Article 2 of the Constitution lays that out. And from Richard Nixon to Bill Clinton to Ronald Reagan, all the way back, commanders in chiefs, presidents have engaged in such making decisions for military strikes. Now, all of a sudden, over 100 or 79 Democrats decided to vote along with Representative Green and ask for the impeachment of a resolution to impeach President Trump over this. I mean, that's the height of hypocrisy. They certainly didn't do that when Barack Obama bombed those 9 nations, nor did they do it when Joe Biden called for the bombing of 7 different nations. So it's just nonsensical for them to call for an impeachment over what is a authority of the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of our military forces.
And Representative Meuser, before we let you go, if you could deliver a message to both the Israeli and the Iranian leadership right now, what message would that be?
Well, Israelis are being pretty patient. Israel is trying to defend itself and to survive. Iran is a terrorist state. Iran is an unbelievable problem to this world. So I'm pleased that we engaged in the way that we did with Iran. And if they want to come to the table and be a normal, civilized nation, they need to lay down their weapons and abide by common rules of engagement and diplomacy. And the only reparation, the only action should be on the part of Iran. Israel wasn't asking for this. Iran has created this environment, and that's why they're going to face the consequences from us, the United States, from Israel. And if you saw, most of the Middle Eastern nations condemned many of their missile attacks.
All right, Representative Dan Meuser, we have to leave it there, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about this topic.
Thanks. Okay, thank you.